Hi, this is Karen Slusher, and this is my case study on internet use violations. The first thing that I want to kind of go over are just what I know about this situation. Some of the key things that the school is located in a wealthier and established area. Dr. Forbes, who's the principal, has been the principal for 9 years, and he's well respected both by the school and by the state for his leadership role. Miss Walker, who is the teacher in question or who is dealing with the situation, is only in her second year of teaching. She's definitely qualified. She has a graduate degree in the field. But she also doesn't have a spouse or family right now, and she really works to maintain a high or to some degree an excessive expectation for students while trying to establish a strong academic policy. Parents are concerned about the potential for low grades in this class and have expressed that concern to both her and the school administration. Dr. Forbes, following those, has met with Ms. Walker to discuss methods to reduce the stress and to increase positive relationships between Ms. Walker and the students taking the course. But over the weekend, over a long weekend, Ms. Walker received an email from an unidentified sender. The email contained a link to a site that had numerous posts about her ability as a teacher, the final post asking the question, "Who wants to see Ms. Walker disappear?" Ms. Walker immediately considered this a threat on her life and contacted Dr. Forbes. She suspected a specific student who made the comment, but had really no quantitative proof that it was him. Dr. Forbes, after seeing the website, did not consider it a threat. Things that I really need to know for this is I want to know the requirements for the course. Is it considered a college level course? Are students earning college credit for it? Is this going to be something that Ms. Walker changed the expectations on prior to what was expected to be with a previous teacher? So how much did she potentially change things? Is this a new course too? And then what do parents consider to be a low grade? I hate asking this, but I really want to know that with an area like this. I think that's important to know what a low grade constitutes. I also want to know what process the school or the district go through to discern where the email maybe came from, where the website came from, and who potentially posted the comments. And then I also want to know what process Dr. Forbes has implemented to work with Ms. Walker. So what were his expectations? How has he supported her, or how has he had other people potentially support her in her development as a teacher? And then I also want to know what support Ms. Walker received in her first year. So not the current school year, but what did she receive her first year as a new teacher? Looking at all of this, I think there are a couple of main problems that you have to work through. I think one, Ms. Walker is still needing support and growth as a new teacher, and she's struggling to understand the balance of rigor and time in her classroom. I also think there's a major situation to identify with the students in terms of inappropriate use of the internet to voice their frustrations because they don't feel a solution has been reached within the school. So really working with the student community to make sure that they understand the importance of a proper online behavior. My proposed plan of action, so here are just some of the steps that I would want to take. I'd want to address the concerns surrounding the website. So the validity of the website, the validity of the potential threat, and the validity of what was actually being stated on the internet. I'd want to implement a plan to work with Ms. Walker and kind of make sure that she understands that there are steps for growth that she needs to make as a teacher. I also want to meet with parents and students to ensure them that the students are receiving the education that they deserve at the school. If the school is going to be one of the top schools in the state, they should be providing an education that reflects that, and that what they're receiving right now should be making them competitive applicants for college and scholarship. I also want to work with the parents on programming for them just to really understand how to better support their students in this kind of an environment. My proposed plan of action in terms of implementing strategies, definitely multiple steps within this that I want to take. I obviously want to work with proper authorities to identify who made the website, who sent the email, and who posted the comments, and then to work with them after that has been established to figure out the validity of a potential threat or death threat as Ms. Walker sees it. I also want to make sure that Ms. Walker feels safe. I think that's important for her to be able to come to a work environment and not feel at risk. And so I want to make sure that there's security implemented at the school to make that an okay situation. I really want to make sure that I'm meeting regularly with Miss Walker to implement an improvement plan for her in terms of teaching. And as part of that, I want to schedule regular observations, either with me as the administrator or other administrators, and with the teacher mentor, along with follow-up meetings for reflection. I also want to send communication to students and parents about the expectations of the course. I think it's important that they understand why the expectations are such, and so that they kind of get why Miss Walker might be implementing the requirements that she's been implementing. I think it's important that we provide clear information for future classes as well, for students who are potentially going to take the class, so that they understand what the expectation is prior to coming into the course. And then it's important to make sure that we establish different parent programs and communication throughout the year, so that parents can navigate how to support a high school student, especially a high school student in a school environment with high expectations. Really, what's best for all students in this, I think the number one thing is make sure that students know that they are learning in a safe environment. And I think that's both physical safety and mental safety. And so I think that we need to make sure that students are being challenged in their education, but within that challenge, it's a good balance of understanding rigor and time. So not making the students feel like they're going to have to spend an excessive amount of time in order to be successful. I think it's also important to make sure that we maintain opportunities or continue to create opportunities where there are competitive offerings for these students if they want to have the options that they seem to want to have post high school. Examples from this to really look at, I think it's really important to remember that the school is considered one of the top schools in the state, and that the parents are expecting their students to have a solid education at this school. It's probably one of the reasons that they've chosen to live where they live. I think the expectation should exist for tough courses, but I also think that students need to understand that, and teachers need to understand that rigor is definitely a different concept, and that learning really doesn't necessarily have to be reflected solely in the grade. And that teachers might need to be changing things to make an effective learning situation. I also think that teachers should be provided with proper support to improve. Teachers are constantly needing to grow, and they constantly need the support of other people to make that happen. As far as reflections for this case go, my thinking around this, I think it's tough working in affluent neighborhoods, that those parents definitely make certain challenges or demand certain levels of dedication. I worked in a very affluent school my very first year of teaching, and the concern always was around whether or not my student was going to receive an A versus a B, and my student is an honor student, and so they should always receive an A. And so it was a constant conversation for me that first year. I also think that teacher training and support is essential for new or newer teachers. From what I can tell right now, I'm not sure that Ms. Walker has received the support that she probably should have. And I'm not even sure if she went through a teacher education program, that wasn't kind of laid out. I also think it's important to remind teachers that developing relationships or a bedside manner is important in education today. And then my last thought was that the internet has really made vocalization of opinions significantly easier. And so students really feel like they can take to the internet, and that if they post something anonymous, that it can't hurt anybody. And I think the reality is that that is not the case. I felt a lot of frustration in this, that the parents had so much control about trying to apply certain expectations without really understanding why something is set the way that it's set. I was also a little bit annoyed with Miss Walker for overreacting to the statement online. I kind of had the same response that Dr. Forbes did. But I think to me, it was more so that she considered it a threat on her life, rather than taking it and saying, how can she as a teacher work to improve, to make sure she's providing the right education. And then I just felt confirmation in this, in how important it is for schools to have PLCs or professional learning communities to help one another grow. I think if Miss Walker had this environment, she might not be in this position. I really value teacher observations, formal and informal. I think it's important to get into one another's classrooms, to not just rely on an administrator to tell you, yes, you're doing this well, or you need to make this change, but to rely on your peers, because they're in there too. They understand what's looking like success in their classes, and maybe how you could implement some things in yours to improve. it makes me really value teacher professional learning communities or learning teams, and communities that meet regularly, not just once a month or a couple times a year, but regularly to really look at learning. I also think it's important to value the look of rigor and what rigor is in a classroom and how we value grades within that. So if a student is learning and we can show that they're learning, even though it doesn't necessarily equate with an A or a B, that we can talk about the effectiveness of what's happening in the classroom. I also value effective communication with parents and students. It seems that there's a lack of communication between maybe the teacher and the parents and students about the expectations and why the expectations are what they are. And then I also really value college and career counselors to round out this picture. By having a strong counselor in a college and career support position, it can really help parents and students understand why a course has the expectations that it does and how to maybe better support students in that role. My ethics and my integrity in this, I think really it's important not to undermine the teacher, but to work with her to improve. I think talking with her about, yes, I understand that she sees it as a threat and I'm going to respect that, but to also kind of coach her through why, maybe from my lens, it doesn't look like a very direct threat, and how we maybe need to work on a couple other things. I also think that my ethics value the communication about online behavior with students. I think they need to understand the importance of their comments online and why that kind of behavior is inappropriate and how it could potentially prove harmful for them in the future. I think my emphasis was also on safety for the students and the teachers to make sure that the learning environment was safe for both of them to be in. And then I also want to make sure that my transparency of policies with advanced classes is out there for parents to really understand. And I think it's just constant communication and recommunicating those policies. And then I also think that my integrity as an administrator is to really show the emphasis on teacher growth and teacher support through a PLC or PLT and staff developments. I also think that it's important to, in terms of how we treat the others, is that one, Miss Walker is heard and her safety is valued. I think it's important to help her understand that being a part of the school is improving her own professional practice and not just assuming that she's doing the right things, but to constantly look at what she's doing and why and how that's benefiting the students. I think it's important to make sure that the parents know that they're heard and that student stress isn't ignored. And so really working with the parents to make sure that the student mental health is acknowledged too in all of this. I also want to make sure that the students understand negative repercussions. I think that students need to recognize that if they say things online, that it does get back to those people and it does end up causing problems or hurting others, and to really work with that behavior. I also really didn't want to make an assumption on who created the website, because the way that Miss Walker stated it, it really didn't come across as her having a very concrete accusation, and so really not making assumptions of the students. And then as far as my code of ethics, I think it's really important that a principal is constantly challenging his or her staff to improve. I think that teachers need to be encouraged to self-reflect and make adjustments. It shouldn't be the same thing year after year after year. And that I also think that the school should be focused on a collective goal for success. And if the school is focused on a collective goal for success and they have this mentality, students are going to kind of start to understand that, and parents are going to follow suit as well. But teachers in this should be supported in establishing the appropriate demands. And so if they are going to have strong demands on student learning, then it needs to be clear as to why and to how, and that maybe we work on an understanding of the grade breakdown as well. And then we also want to make sure that parents are part of this collective goal as well. So what can they do from their role as a parent to help us really make sure that student success and student learning is what it should be? And that's it for this case study.